It's showtime.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Aimee and I are back. I know we did this was it a couple weeks ago, a month
I
ago
think it was
now?
like a month and a half ago already, surprisingly.
Yeah. So we're back. I think we're going to be back also in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So we're just going to chat it up like we did last time, answer your guys' questions. But before we get into all of that, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. So my name is Madina. I am a licensed therapist at OCD. I also do a lot of the training and onboarding of the new therapists, which has been really fun because OCD has been growing and we've been hiring a lot of new therapists so we can get a lot of treatment to you guys, the best treatment. So lots of cool stuff happening at OCD. And Aimee, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm Aimee. Excuse me, I was telling Medina I have like a horrible cold, so excuse my coughing. I'm sorry. I'm an advocate. On Instagram is obsessively anxious. So few of you might know my handle, but I'm just really there to let you know that you're not alone. And some of the more common things with OCD that's not really talked about too much, like commands, urges, images, stuff like that. So just kind of put the word out there, especially for OCD Awareness Month. It's important. So let you know you're not struggling by yourself.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about your page. You're very encouraging. So if anyone needs encouragement, her page is definitely the place to go. So
Thank you. And I can't tell you how many one of my friends today, actually, she just started with NOCD. So I was like, anytime anybody's like, where should I go? I say NOCD. NOCD, just go right there.
yes. And speaking of that, anyone on tonight's live, if you feel like you're struggling with OCD or you've been diagnosed and you need treatment, please visit treatmyocd.com. You can sign up for a free 15-minute phone consultation and hopefully get set up to see one of our really great therapists. So
Yes.
without further ado, should we dive right in?
Let's go.
Okay. All right. How do I deal with my real event OCD? My childhood sexual mistakes are making me feel like an absolute horrible person. What do I do? So I can
wouldn't
start.
mind answering that one. I'm not really too clear with that one. I'm not good with that. So
Okay. Yeah, I think the big thing with real event OCD is reminding yourself that most of us have done things that maybe we weren't very proud of or things that weren't the best decisions. And that's simply because we're human. If none of us ever made mistakes, we would live in a very different world, essentially. So a lot of it is accepting not only the uncertainty associated with maybe fearing that that could happen again or whatever your fear around it is, but also accepting that you are human, right? So a lot of self-acceptance in that situation, I think, can be really helpful. And then, so much of OCD is based on feeling, right? So feeling like a horrible person and actually being a horrible person are not the same thing. So really making sure you're deciphering between feeling and fact. And I think and this is kind of just for all the questions we answered tonight, you guys, probably can be applicable across the board, no matter what the theme the person is inquiring about.
plus, I think too, if I could just add something that I just thought of, if you're beating yourself up for something that happened years and years and years ago, you're not going to be able to give yourself compassion. And unless you start learning how to love yourself again, no matter what you did, you're not going to be able to heal. Like, it's just going to be, you're going to be able to heal, but it's going to be a little bit harder without compassion for yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the research, right? It shows that when we're denigrating to ourselves, we actually put ourselves in a mindset where we feel less inclined to actually make changes, right? And people with OCD are trying to make changes with their life. All of us are probably trying to change some part of our lives or some part of who we are. And we know that, being denigrating is not helpful at all. So
exactly. Great first question.
Yep. All right. Okay. I have been obsessing about the thoughts to the point it, one, feels like a desire, and two, thinking of them deliberately. I did used to and sort of still do feel anxiety. Is this normal for OCD, or am I sick? I need to read that again. Thinking of them deliberately. And sort of still do feel anxiety. Okay. Do you want me to answer it first?
I'll fire away at this one and then see if I
You
get it
will?
right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
will.
go for it.
So first things first, you have to sit with the uncertainty. Is it a desire? Is it not a desire? You don't need to know the answer to that. Like, you trying to figure that out is only going to cause you more anxiety, which in turn is going to cause your thoughts to be more prominent. Thinking of them deliberately or intrusively does not make a difference whether you thought of it on purpose or whether you thought of it accidentally. The only thing that's making them intrusive is the anxiety associated with it. Doesn't matter if it's OCD or are you sick, you don't need to know. It's just OCD is always going to try to find a reason for you to think that it's not OCD. You don't need to know, because no matter what it is, there's always a treatment. You will always get better. There's always something that can be done to make it better. I'm not sure if I answered that right.
There's no right answer, I don't think. But yeah, I love all that. I think of your question. You're saying it feels like more of a desire. It feels like the thoughts feel more real. And typically when people say that, it's probably because they've been doing a lot of compulsions associated with the thought. So we know that each time we behave, anxiety and OCD is so closely paying attention. So each time we do a compulsion, we are actually strengthening the fear. So if you're starting to feel like it's more and more of a desire, it's likely because there's probably an increase in compulsions. So really working on resisting those compulsions. I always tell my members that each time you behave, OCD is paying such close attention. And so if, most people are very annoyed at their OCD. And so if we want to kind of squash the OCD symptoms or kind of reduce them, we're thinking about it each time we behave. Are we feeding into the fear, or are we aligning our behaviors with our values, right? So that's kind of the first thing I'm thinking of. And then when you say that you're deliberately, it sounds like you're deliberately thinking of the thoughts. That actually makes me think that that's a compulsion. So sometimes people will
going to say that.
Yeah, purposely bring up thoughts to check how they feel. And we know that anxiety and OCD is never satisfied, right? So a lot of times I see this with harm OCD. So initially someone's coming in with harm and they're feeling very anxious about the thoughts, and they're doing the subsequent behaviors to make themselves feel better. And then once their anxiety starts to go down because they've been doing ERP, they'll say, Madina, oh my God, I'm not anxious about the thought. Does that mean I now want to actually do it? Right? So it's like either way, you can't win. So I would work on not deliberately thinking of the thought, but if the thought pops up, we're working on responding to it with, there's a chance that this could be true.
And like, the thoughts aren't the problem. Like, I know we say this all the time. It's not the thoughts that are the problems. I've seen so many times, is this an OCD thought or is this a non-OCD thought? There's no difference. The only difference is the feeling you're having associated with the thought, because all the thoughts are just bunches of words, whether they come in images, urges, commands, no matter what it is, it's all the same thing. It's just, you have to trust it's OCD and do the work.
Yep. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm hitting a snag in therapy. I was doing well, but just struggling now. What advice can you give me to push and hope to keep going? This is a perfect one for you, Aimee.
Okay, so first of all, I'm so sorry that you hit a snag, but you need to know recovery is not by any means linear. I've been in recovery for almost 2 years now, and last week I had a day where I couldn't stop compulsing, I couldn't stop ruminating, and I just had a day. And that's going to happen. Like, we're all going to have bad days, OCD or not OCD. It's just going to happen. So what I could tell you to keep pushing and hope to keep going is that remember that where you are right now is where you wanted to be last year. So where you are next year is going to be where you thought you were this year, if that makes sense. Like, you're always going to, you may not think you're doing well, but you're like 10 times stronger than you were at this time last year. I can guarantee you that. So remember that, be gentle with yourself. And remember that OCD isn't going to just go away. It's never going to go away. It's managed. But you have to understand that up to some point, you have to start doing ERP on a continuous basis once your therapist says it's okay. And as you start doing that more continuously, you'll see the anxiety will start to diminish more and more. And then the thoughts will start to calm down a little bit. But be gentle with yourself if you have a bad day. It's going to be all right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something that's coming to my mind is we know that the science behind motivation has very little to do with thought, which is so ironic considering this whole sort of treatment for OCD and anxiety is based on changing behavior. So when you think of wanting to keep going, think of how are you acting, right? Because we know that our behaviors influence our thoughts much more than our thoughts influence our behavior, right? We can think of even like social psychology has like done research on this, even just standing in a posture with like your hands on your hips and your chest proud increases certain hormones in our body that are associated with motivation, right? And that's just stance, right? It's nothing to do with thought. So when you think of keeping yourself motivated, think of your behaviors. So yeah. Next one. Ultimately, OCD asks us a question. Did I run over someone? Do I love him or her? Am I contaminated? How do you recommend responding to those questions?
I don't need to know right now.
Okay. So you're kind of giving the thought like no attention essentially or no value.
Right.
I love that. I don't need to know right now. Okay. My favorite is to just ask whenever you're in a situation, ask yourself, what am I scared of? And whatever the fear is, tack, there's a chance in front of it. What that does is it pushes or forces, I don't like those words, but it kind of forces you to sit with uncertainty, right? Because you're acknowledging there's a chance that this thing that I'm scared of can happen. And so that's what's helping you kind of acclimate to the discomfort that's associated with the chance that something could happen. And I also like that phrase because it really addresses what we call thought action fusion. I know I've talked about this on here a lot, but thought action fusion, for those of you who don't know, is very prominent with people who have anxiety and OCD. So they believe that if they think, feel, or say something, that must mean it's true, right? So if I tell you guys right now that I'm about to run out of my balcony door and just jump off my balcony, someone with OCD would be scared to say that, right? Because they think or feel if they say that, then that means they will do that. So when you willingly say something like, there's a chance I could jump off my balcony right now, you're letting yourself sit with the uncertainty, but you're also at the same time not trying to figure out if it will or won't happen. So I recommend saying those on repeat. There's a chance I could jump off my balcony. There's a chance I could jump off my balcony. Maybe I'd even go stand next to my balcony, and repeat that over and over and over.
And the thing is too, with thought action fusion, like I was going to do a post on this tomorrow, you are not that powerful. I love you all, but you're not that powerful. Like your thoughts have no like condescending moment, not condescending, you know what I mean? Like no, you know what I'm trying to say. Like it doesn't have any power over what's going to happen in the real world. Like if that was the case, I would be living in South Carolina right now.
Right. Yeah. I always joke to my members, I'm like, if you can speak things into existence, you best believe you're speaking me into being like a millionaire or living on the beach or something. And shockingly, I don't have either of those things, right? Because the world doesn't work that way. The world
You know, I
isn't.
know
Go ahead.
with the contamination theme on here, I know that's especially hard, especially with everything with COVID. Like I know you're like, you know, am I gonna take my family out and are they gonna get sick? And you can take all the precautions in the world. You can put a mask on everyone, you can get the vaccine, you can do everything you need to do and still get sick. So there's always that chance that that's just gonna happen. You know,
Yep.
things just happen, you know.
Yeah. And last little thing here, I think of most things that have happened to all of us on this call that have not been pleasant were not things that we planned for, right? There's been things that have happened that we never would have predicted or we never spent time trying to prevent happening, because that's how life works, unfortunately and fortunately. Uncomfortable things happen. Okay. "24/7, it doesn't leave. It's always there every day, no breaks. Every day depends on the severity. I don't know how to fight this if I can never get out of this horrible feeling." Yeah, that definitely sounds tough. Sometimes OCD can be very persistent, and that's typically because a lot of the behaviors have been aligning with the fear. So kind of what I was mentioning earlier, really working on looking at your behaviors and looking at small changes you can make that go against what fear is telling you to do. And then I'm gonna let Aimee talk about this more.
So I am sorry that you're going through this. I've been there, and I feel horrible that you're even going through this 24/7. But the thing is that the more you want it to leave, the more it's going to stay. And I know that sounds horrible, but the more that you accept that the thoughts and feelings are going to be here, the less the anxiety gets, because you're pushing away a feeling that isn't supposed to be pushed away. Anxiety isn't there to harm you. It's there to keep you safe. It just feels like a harmful feeling right now. So by you accepting it, and I'm going to say this, and I know you guys see me say this all the time, blue in the face, that does not mean you're accepting the content. That does not mean you're accepting the feeling. That does not mean you're accepting any of it. You're accepting that it's present. That's it. Breathe through it. Practice your mindfulness. Get outside. And once you start seeing that it doesn't define you as a person, and that anxiety isn't anything to run away from, it will slowly start to diminish.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying essentially you're not assigning meaning to the thought.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I say that all the time too.
Because there is no meaning to them.
Right. But people with OCD want to, Madina, what does it mean that does not mean anything about you, right?
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, not a thing. It doesn't matter what it is, what the content is, what the theme is. That's why I don't even like to put things in themes anymore, because it's like, in a community sense, yes, it's good to associate with other people that have the same theme, but treatment wise, it doesn't matter.
Okay. "How do I stop confessing as a compulsion? Whenever I get a bad thought, I have the need to tell someone, and when I do, it feels better for a little bit, but later the anxiety comes back."
Confessing as a compulsion, my dear, it's always going to be there. You're going to feel the need to do that because OCD is telling you that if you don't confess, then you're keeping a secret. And now you're a bad person because you're not telling everyone everything. That's how it keeps you stuck in a cycle. I used to tell my husband every single thought I had for a year and a half wasn't healthy for him, wasn't healthy for me. Once you stop confessing, it's going to take some time for the anxiety to go away and let you know that you're still going to be safe. Like, you can let OCD have the last word and still be okay. It doesn't need to have the answer, neither do you.
So if you don't mind me asking, what did you do to stop confessing? Like, when was like that turning point after a year and a half?
I told my husband that if I asked him a question, not to answer me under any circumstances.
Yep.
And he didn't. And I told him, in emergency circumstances, unless you see that I'm like physically like ill, don't answer it.
I'm so glad you said that. That's kind of what I was thinking too, right? We know that, loved ones can accommodate, unfortunately, in a way that can strengthen OCD. So by giving reassurance or answering questions that have already been answered, so I've always, that's kind of something I do at the very beginning of treatment. I identify with my member who is feeding into the symptoms and how we can get them to choose not to give reassurance to their loved one. At the same token, the loved one also learning to resist that as well. Yeah, so that's definitely one thing. So if you do have anyone in particular that you tend to confess to, I would talk to them and say, hey, you know, do you notice I ask these questions a lot and have them not answer? When I think of confessing, I also think, I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but some of you might relate to this. When people say sorry, right? People with anxiety say sorry a lot.
I do it
Because
all the time. It's like, I'm sorry. They're like, stop saying sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Oh my
so
God.
if any of my members are watching, they know I challenge them. I jokingly say I do not accept their apologies, because really when we say sorry, we're asking people to tell us it's okay, right? Same thing with confessing. A lot of times we want people to tell us that it's going to be okay. Oh, it's okay that you had a crush on another man when you were 7 years old, right? Or it's okay that you didn't wash your hands that 7th time. You're essentially asking them to tell you it's going to be okay, when really they don't know. They have no idea any more than you do. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Compulsions make you feel better for a little bit, and then the anxiety comes back. So remembering that too can be helpful, right? This is a very short-term sense of relief I'm getting. Let me choose another option.
If I can add something else, Madina, that I just
Yeah.
thought of, like the confessing might seem like it's like, and this is with all compulsions, with OCD, compulsions, reassurance, everything. You have to think of it before you ask that question. Are you willing to for short-term relief or long-term gain? Because if you're going to continue with the short-term relief, you're never going to achieve the long-term gain, because you have to stop that, like altogether. Like you just have to be okay with not knowing. Like maybe I am the only one in the world with this thought. Maybe I am the only one with this. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let me see what else we got. All right. Is it possible to get rid of anxiety, depression, and OCD without medication? So OCD is chronic. So we don't think of getting rid of OCD. We just think of managing OCD to a point where you can function better in your life. Depending on the specific anxiety disorder or depression, that is different. So I can't really necessarily speak to that. There's a lot of different sort of anxiety disorders and depressive disorders. But as far as OCD, we want to you can manage it with with medication. I have seen people get better without medication though. My personal stance is less medication is always best. But I do recognize that it's helpful in some situations. So that's my stance. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Aimee.
For me, I did it without medication because it's just with me, and I've always been very sensitive to medication. So for me, it was just better without it. But like Medina said, if you're going to take medication, it has to be in conjunction with ERP. Medication is not a fix. It's just kind of to get the intrusive thoughts to calm down a little bit, so that way you could do ERP, but it's not a one fits all, and it's not a quick fix. Like it's still just gonna kind of mellow down the thoughts, and it may work, it may not work. Like that's kind of like the attitude that you have to have. But like she said, you can't expect OCD to just go away, because it's here forever, but you can't live a really good life with it. I am.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the one thing I noticed, I don't know your exact subtype, but a lot of times I'll see a lot of wanting to go on and off medication with more like just right themes, or like somatic type, because they want to feel just right? And so what winds up happening is they're going on and off and switching medications and whatnot. And we know that OCD oftentimes becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And because you're going on and off and switching medications, you actually aren't getting better.
Right.
So this is where I am going to strongly encourage, again, that values and fears list. Like, are we taking the medication out of our values, or are we taking it out of a fear? So I think that can help drive your decision in
Absolutely.
yeah. So. Okay. What are your guys' thoughts on an individual entering a residential program? The OCD has taken over my life and I had to resign from my job and move back home because it's gotten out of hand. Wow. So it sounds like a lot of things have changed for you because of your symptoms, which I know can be really common. OCD can definitely be a debilitating disorder. So first off, I'm definitely sorry to hear that. If those are the things that are happening in your life, it does sound like, either residential or maybe an intensive outpatient might be most appropriate, just because of, all the life changes you had to make. I'm assuming, you said the OCD was why you left your job and had to move back home. So yeah, and then I know your next comment says Rogers. Rogers is a good one if you are going to look into that.
I mean, if it's going to help you, honey, I say go for it. I mean, what's the worst that could go wrong? Like, it's just, that's just going to help you, then I wish you all the best in the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think level of care is important because certain levels of care won't have like the frequency that you might need. So I like to always liken it to like medical appointments, right? Your like doctor, if you had cancer, for example, would give you a certain amount of like chemo treatments, right? Based on, I'm guessing your severity of, the stage of cancer you're in. I don't know why I had such a hard time articulating that. But the doctor will alter the treatment based on the severity of your symptoms, not only with cancer, but anything, right? And so it should be similar like that with OCD as well. So we wish you the best of luck.
And I know a lot of people that went to Rogers that, really helped them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, I know this isn't a question, but I agree. The brain is so fascinating. And the reason I pulled this up was because a lot of times I always like to remind people with anxiety that really you're mad at your brain for doing what it does naturally.
Excuse me, guys.
No, it's okay. Are you okay? Do you need?
I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. A lot of times, like, it's Madina, why do I have this thought? Why do I have this feeling? I'm like, I hope you have, creative thoughts. I hope you have feelings across the board, right? That means you're human. So I think part of ERP, for me at least, is you're accepting that, I'm going to have odd thoughts and I'm going to have feelings that I don't like feeling. And there's really no need to explain why that's there, right? Even people who don't have, why do I feel sad? I don't know. You're human, right? And we could sit here and talk for 60 minutes and try to figure out why you're sad or why you had that intrusive thought. But again, as I was mentioning earlier, talking about this isn't going to help us, right? We have to behave out of it. Like I think of even when you treat depression, a lot of it, like true depression treatment, is behavior activation, which is really just getting up and doing the things that a depressed person doesn't want to do, right? It's not about necessarily talking about it. So all that to say, yes, I agree. The brain is fascinating.
It's phenomenal. When I first started recovering and I was reading about how the brain works and how OCD is and like what it is, now like when I get like a really like crappy thought, I'm like, well, that was creative. Like, thanks for making that come up. Like, it's just like, it's phenomenal. Like how it works. Like, how is my brain capable of that? Okay, really?
Yeah. And I think switching the mindset around it, you judge the thought less and there's less need to get rid of it to understand it. And that's what people are doing with OCDs. They're trying to get rid of it, understand their thoughts. So yeah. What is an important thing to remember as a parent of an OCD teen? I'm concerned about how to set limits and discipline, like consequences. Yeah, it can definitely be hard. I know that when we treat people in general, we were kind of mentioning this earlier. I always like to make sure that there's not, if any, family accommodation going on. Unfortunately, our loved ones think they're helping us, but they're not. So, definitely understanding what giving into the behavior or maybe the compulsion with your teen means and having a conversation with them. I don't know if they're in treatment, but But if not, asking if the therapist hasn't already to join the session. I know for me, I'll always have any loved ones join the session to talk about family accommodation, because it's definitely hard, right? It's not easy to have to set these limits or consequences. I think of it definitely in terms of like when I'm seeing members, sometimes it doesn't feel the greatest for me either. Like I always joke that I have to sit with discomfort too, because I'm having you guys do these uncomfortable things and you're asking me for reassurance and I'm just staring at you, right? And so really having a discussion on what it looks like to set those limits, because you don't, by no means you have to be like an a-hole about it, right? You can say, remember we talked about not giving reassurance, right? Versus like, oh, you always ask that question.
Yeah.
So communicating with your teen and or therapist, if there's one involved, about what would feel like a good boundary. And I know I'm talking a lot about this, but I don't know how like symptomatic your child is, but I know sometimes it can get to the point where like I've had parents like, yeah, you're leaving dinner on the table. You're not bringing the dinner up to their room. And, that might seem mean, but I always tell my members, if you ever experience me in a way that feels very direct, it's probably because OCD is trying to run the session and I want to take no part in that. And so I have so much compassion for you as an individual, but I have none for your OCD. And so even communicating that can be helpful.
I think the book that I gave to my husband too, Helping a Family Member with OCD, I'm not sure if John Hirschfield wrote that.
I think
but that one was really helpful. Let me see. I have it in my highlights, but I can't remember who wrote that.
I should know, but I don't, so I won't pretend that I do.
Let me see if I can find it. I have it here. Hold on one second, guys. I'm sorry. Here it is. John Hirschfield wrote it.
Okay.
So here it is. You can see. No, you can't.
I'll put it in the chat. What's it called?
When a family member has OCD.
When a family member
has OCD by John Hirschfield.
I might have butchered the last name, which is, I don't think so. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't bring me to the bottom. Okay, cool. Well, good luck, David.
Yes, and thank you for being an advocate for him.
Yeah. How to ERP with horrible thoughts and relationship OCD, obsessing everything my girlfriend says, obsessing over or about. Do you want to start with this one? I feel like
I'll have you start with that one, and we can think of what to say.
Okay. So I would first probably address horrible thoughts and just say thoughts. Just because I think we're labeling the thoughts as bad. And as soon as we label something as bad, we're going to want to get rid of it or to make it stop. So that might be me being a little nitpicky, but I think the way we judge our thoughts is important when it comes to ERP. And I think there's several ways for anyone on this call to do ERP. So that's always something I like to remind people. There's not one way to do it. So I know earlier in the call or the live, I don't know why I called it a call, but I talked about responding to your thoughts with the uncertainty, right? So there's a chance that my girlfriend doesn't love me, right? I don't know exactly what you're worried about. You could also say something in the definitive, right? My girlfriend and I are going to break up. People might be like, why would I say that, Madina? Well, that thought action fusion I was talking about earlier is, again, addressing that, right? Because you say you and your girlfriend are going to break up, does that mean now, bam, you guys broke up? Or is that just a thought? And because you say that thought, again, you're putting yourself in a situation you're sitting with something that's uncomfortable, right? And you're getting used to that discomfort, and you're seeing behaviorally that just because I have a thought doesn't mean is now going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you could try I call it the uncertain potential. So there's a chance, and I call it the definitive, right? I am, or this is going to happen.
And OCD wants to be the main partner in your life all the time. So it's going to make you obsess about everything your girlfriend says because it doesn't want to see you happy ever. So just be like, whatever. Like, you could say whatever you want, but you're not going to run the SHIT here.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, I always remind people specifically with relationship OCD is the best way to know if your partner is for you is to actually engage in the relationship, not to think about it. Right. So again, that behavior stuff I was talking about earlier, or the thinking and behavior I was talking about earlier, thinking about if your relationship is perfect or what it should be, or if you guys are going to be together forever, doesn't give us an answer, right? Engaging with your partner and being present with your partner is the best way to get closest to that answer.
Right. And if I can add one more thing, Adam, stop holding the expectation that the relationship is going to be perfect. Because if you hold that expectation, you're going to be let down, because there is no such thing. Like, my husband and I fight, we argue, we don't want to talk to each other for a day or so. But then when that happens and my OCD tries to come in, that's just OCD trying to gain headway. Okay, but I'm not always going to be happy, and neither are you, and neither is she. I guarantee you piss her off sometimes too, but that's just how it is. So once you realize that every relationship is not perfect, you'll be more okay with, if you guys have a fight, then it's just a fight. It's not the end of the world and you're going to break up.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. And yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say something, and then I lost my train of thought, and now it's back to me. But
I swear it's happening so much with me lately. I have like a horrible brain fog. I swear it's this weather change.
It's so late at night. That's what it is. I know whenever I do these, I'm like, guys, it's so late for me. I go to bed at like 8:30. But I was going to say, again, for all these themes, there's OCD is never satisfied. So I've literally, and members and I have laughed. Madina, my boyfriend and I had such a good weekend, but then the whole time I was wondering if I was just pretending that it was good and that, we really aren't meant to be together. And we're just sitting there laughing because it's like, wow, OCD is never satisfied. This is why you came, to enjoy more time with your partner. And now that you're actually enjoying time with your partner, of course, OCD wants you to doubt what that means.
Of course it does. It doesn't want you to be happy. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever,
I know.
ever.
Aimee says that with like a little like aggressiveness. I like it. She's like, never.
Never.
All right. So hopefully that helps. Okay. When it comes to ERP, how do I decide how much to do or where to start? Because it is not good to stop all compulsions, right? Oh, well, this is a tricky one. So first off, it sounds like you're obsessing over how to do ERP. I'm going to take a guess that maybe you have some just right OCD going on, so wanting things to be perfect. And so again, that self-fulfilling prophecy of wanting to do ERP just right actually interferes with our ability to do ERP. And we can, it's okay. We can see, I reassured her that it was okay.
I didn't even realize you did that.
Me either, but I'm just joking with you. But I can't remember what I was saying.
That's right, OCD.
Yeah. So basically, we wouldn't want to obsess over if we're doing it enough or not doing it, or doing it too much, or whatever it may be. That's part of the uncertainty we have to sit with. The goal is not that we do ERP perfectly. The goal is that we stop doing the things that are taking up so much time in your day. So thinking of the compulsions, I see success as, hey, you're spending less time doing those ritualistic behaviors that are driven by fear, and you're doing more of those things that you really enjoy doing, like your hobbies and hanging out with friends and things like that. So I wouldn't, Corey, I would not focus on if you're doing too much or not enough, or if it's bad to stop all compulsions. I wouldn't perseverate too much on that. As far as where to start, I would definitely recommend getting a therapist if you don't, because they can help you understand where to start. So a specialist in ERP as far as where to start. I don't know. Aimee, if you don't mind me asking, when you started doing ERP, did you start with a therapist or did you do it on your own first or?
I did it on my own, but I don't ever recommend that. I feel like it took me so much longer because I was just learning on it by myself. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I? But it was like right in the middle. I didn't have like access to social media. So I didn't know anything about NOCD. I didn't know anything about anything. And I was like so scared to like tell anybody what I was thinking. So,
Mhm.
commentary. So it was just like, I'm just going to learn it on my own. And I swear I would have gotten so much better, so much faster if I had just started with a therapist. So I don't
Mhm.
ever recommend it. I
Mhm.
feel like I put myself through like unnecessary pain because I don't think I was doing it right in the beginning because it became compulsive. I was doing ERP to get rid of the anxiety when I was supposed to sit with it.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely when it could see like that happening right with Just Right too, is like you are doing it to the ERP. I feel like the 840 is starting to hit me a little now. I'm like rambling over.
Oh my God, we've been on for 40 minutes already. How is that even
Yeah,
possible?
because we have so much fun, Aimee. That's
We
why.
do. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that.
But yes, I was going to say that sometimes ERP can become a compulsion. And that's why I'm saying try not to focus on how much you should or shouldn't do, um, and focus more on acting more out of your values versus your fears.
Mhm.
So, all right. Okay. Can anyone relate? I have this constant feeling in my heart and chest. Is it OCD, anxiety, depression? It's always there, like my brain hurts, physically hurts. Whew, that sounds tiring 24/7. I'm sure people on this call can relate. I don't know if anyone has commented on it, but I definitely see that commonly as somatic symptoms or physical symptoms with OCD. And again, just like thoughts can be intrusive or unwanted, so can sensations. So a lot of times people with OCD will misinterpret or overestimate the threat of a physical sensation, which again becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So, oh my God, why is my heart beating so fast? And then because I'm focusing on that and getting nervous, and now I start sweating, and why am I sweating? And now I'm shaking, right? And it just
It's
boils,
continuous.
yes, rolls over, not boils over, rolls over into more physical symptoms. So yeah, again, I would get an assessment, right? If you want to assess through if it's OCD, anxiety, or depression. Honestly, I would recommend ERP for OCD and anxiety. I have ERP goggles on and I've done ERP like stuff with depression like symptoms because again, it's a lot of behavior oriented treatment. So even though you feel depressed and you don't want to get up and go for a walk, we're choosing to go for a walk anyway. So you could get an assessment, but I would honestly recommend getting treatment for ERP, especially for the physical symptoms. There's something called interoceptives that I'm sure some of you on this call have heard of. So basically, it's just re-evoking physical sensations to get used to that discomfort and then to create a new, what we call threat appraisal. So with anxiety, we overestimate, like I was talking about earlier, the threat of something happening. And it's usually pretty inaccurate. So what we do is we avoid situations. So maybe you avoid situations where you feel like your heart or your chest could feel kind of weird. And so you do not give yourself an opportunity to create a new threat appraisal or a new threat assumption, I guess, just so that word's not confusing. But so expose yourself to situations by doing interoceptives, like let's get our heart rate up. Let's maybe do a workout class. Let's maybe put some books on our chest, breathe really fast, inhale and exhale, and get used to those sensations so you can create new threat appraisals. So any thoughts, Aimee?
With my brain hurts, like physically hurts, I remember like I was thinking so much all the time that I gave myself a headache all the time. So that could be what you're experiencing. I'm not really sure. Like when you say physically hurts, it's most likely you just have a headache because your mind is tired, like your head is tired.
Mhm.
Like it feels like a weight, like you're carrying around like a bowling ball in your head all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think of just like the physical, how our body physically changes when we're stressed, right? We might clench our jaw. We might be
Mhm.
like more tensed up. We might be like, I don't know, like
I
we're more
remember
tense.
I used to be like this, like it's like a fetal position. Like I'd be like this, like clenching my jaw, and like I'd be like tensing. So that could create, the physical pain that you're feeling in your head as well. But if it
Yeah.
doesn't get better, like with the pain, definitely I wouldn't do any harm seeing a doctor either, especially if it's continuous. Maybe they can give you like, just meditation or like relaxation techniques to kind of help you through that.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, let's see. I'm trying to answer maybe some that we haven't some people we haven't answered. Okay. My last OCD episode played on contamination. It tends to bounce around theme to theme. How do I handle OCD when this dynamic is in I'm guessing when this dynamic is in place, does this dynamic make it harder to handle? I think you've talked about your theme jumping, right, Aimee?
Yeah, OCD is going to jump around to try to see if it can get you stuck again. The theme, it doesn't make a difference, even though like if mine jumped from schizophrenic to harm to just right to scrupulosity, just because it just wanted to see me suffer. So it can be a little more difficult when it's jumping because now you're wondering why it's jumping. And then when it stays stuck on one theme, then you're wondering why it's not jumping. Like it's always, like Madina said earlier, it's never going to be satisfied. So no matter what the theme is, it doesn't matter. Um, does that dynamic make it harder to handle? It will make it harder to handle if you try to figure out why it's doing that. Just,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really a theme. It's just another thing that's popping into your head. Like you may have seen it on TV. You may have seen it on social media. Like I talked earlier on my page the other day, like, everything became a trigger. So if you see something like harm OCD, then you're going to see something harmful on TV, then all of a sudden it's going to jump to harm. And then you see something about schizophrenia, it's going to jump to schizophrenia. Like it's just the way that the OCD mind works is like bonkers. Like it's like, I don't know if you guys ever saw The Labyrinth, but it's like the bog of eternal stench. Like it never goes away. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like it's always hanging there. But
Yeah. That's the thought action fusion,
yeah,
right? That we were talking about earlier. Like Aimee was talking about, like, oh, if I see a commercial about a heart attack, right, then I'm going to think of a heart attack, right? That's just what the mind does.
mm-hmm.
Versus now, oh my God, why did that thought pop in?
It must
Um,
mean something, or it's a sign from the universe. No,
yeah.
it's not.
A sign from the universe. Yeah. So what I notice in these sort of situations is I typically will see individuals' themes jump when their theme we've been working on is starting to dwindle a little bit. And I believe, because I'm very skeptical of OCD, that OCD likes to do that because it wants to doubt your ability to remember how to do ERP. Because a lot of times I'll have someone come back to me and they're like, Madina, this really weird thing happened like a couple of days ago. I started thinking about this and I don't know how to respond to it. And I'll, again, in my challenging way, I'll sit with my member and encourage them to use the skills we've been using with every other theme, right? So that's the good news, Tony, is no matter what the theme is, the response is always the same. There's a chance that could happen. Maybe. I mean, I don't need to figure that out. So don't let OCD cause you to doubt your ability to handle when the theme changes, because it's really the same response. So yeah.
I know it's frustrating though, because when it jumps back and forth, it makes you doubt yourself. It makes you wonder, well, is there something wrong with me? Could it be
Mm-hmm.
something other than OCD? And then it makes you obsess about obsessing. And it's like, am I ever going to get better? If I take medication, will this one not work for me, or will that never work for me? Like, people always throw something in there.
Yes, I agree. This is a good follow-up question. So though you say content doesn't matter, but it's the content that keeps you hooked, right? How to step past it, how to differentiate between thought suppression and showing restraint with thoughts.
What a good question.
I know. I love that question.
I have to read that again.
Yeah. So I'm guessing they're kind of talking about how, and I just said it again, right? The content doesn't necessarily matter. The reason it keeps you hooked, though, is because the content for that individual is based on that individual's values.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. So that's, and I say this to my members, not in a reassuring way, but you worry about these things because they're important to you, not because they're actually true. And that's just the fact of the matter. Anyone, even without OCD, you ask someone what they typically worry about, bam, you got their top 3 values probably right there. Yeah. So that's why the content keeps you hooked, because it's something important to you. If it wasn't important, it wouldn't keep you hooked. And yeah, differentiating between thought suppression and showing restraint. So I wouldn't recommend either, because we're not suppressing or restraining our thoughts. We're resisting our thinking. And so I think this is really, really important to differentiate between. So there's a lot of therapy that will tell you to just change the way you think, which is so counterproductive to anxiety. Mm-hmm. We cannot change the way we think. So, or the thoughts that pop in, right? And that's exactly how we know the difference. So a thought pops in. It's not something you think of. It's not something you purposely try to bring up. Now, everything that happens after, and I know I've talked about this before, but that's all that conjuring up of information following the thought. That's what we refer to as thinking. That's what we're working on resisting. So I wouldn't work on differentiating or stopping or restraining any thoughts. It's the thinking we want to work on resisting.
You said everything I would say.
Okay. Let's see what else we got. I'm obsessed with choking on food and liquid too. It happened out of the blue. I can't drink from a cup or even a straw without intense fear. It takes hours to drink 1 cup of water. Any help is appreciated.
The thing is, I dealt with this too. Sorry, Madina. I just
No, go for it.
Your body is incredible. If your mind thinks that you're not going to be able to swallow something, your throat's going to feel like it's closing. It's a powerful thing. I remember the other day, my son is 13 and he had to take an Advil. He couldn't swallow it, even though he swallowed it before, but because he was nervous about swallowing it, he couldn't get it down. It's the same thing. You know, and so you trying to drink from a cup or a straw would be ERP for you a little bit, right, Madina?
Yeah. That's interesting too, because I treated an individual with the same fear, and we started with watching videos of people choking on food. And then we worked our way up to eating with food. She did a compulsion of checking kind of. So I don't know if you're doing any of that. So working on resisting that, because remember that behavior of checking to see if everything's okay strengthens the fear. And the more you very slowly sip your water, that behavior is strengthening the fear that you can't handle drinking the water, right? Mm-hmm. And then maybe we work up to chugging the whole glass of water. Or I've done the things I do in my sessions, let's eat something and do jumping jacks or something where it feels like you could be more likely to choke, right? The interesting thing with that member too is she told me she choked on food before. And the irony of probably everyone on this call is that worst fear that you don't want to happen, probably something to that effect has happened before. And I say this because OCD, again, doubts your ability to manage. We are resilient as humans. The research shows we are much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And so we're planning and preparing for something that hasn't happened and likely something we've already managed before. So again, really, really showing that you can manage these scary things by behaving in a way that aligns with that confidence. So yeah, but start small. You don't have to like start chugging 5 gallons of water or anything like that. All right, let's do a couple.
I'm so sorry, guys.
It's okay. I'm the sleepy one. You're the coughing one. We're having fun with it though.
We are.
Okay. Okay, sorry. I want to get to maybe a person where you haven't answered yet. Okay. I have difficulty placing my level of distress on the SUD scale and would benefit from a tool.
What is the SUD scale, Madina?
Yeah, so SUD stands for subjective unit of distress. So it's typically like a 0 to 10 or a 0 to 100 scale, 100 or 10 being the worst stress that you've ever felt in your life. I don't know if you use this, Aimee, but we use it to kind of understand when the ERP is kind of done. So when someone has hypothetically habituated, meaning their anxiety has come down about halfway. I wish I could send an attachment. I don't think I can. I don't know how to do that. But basically what I would suggest here, you guys can still see me, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Typically when you're starting to have physical symptoms, that means you're higher on the SUD scale. I wish I could share my screen. I'm so like not technology. But I have like a little tool I use. So I think of 0 as like no distress at all, you're relaxed. And then when you're about a 5, that's when you're moderately anxious, you're uncomfortable, but you can basically continue to function. So you're feeling anxious, but maybe you're still working, you're still engaging with your friends. And then when we work up to like the 8, 9, 10, that's when we're starting to see some severe distress, like you can't concentrate and there's physical signs of distress. So maybe you're like sweating or shaking or things of that nature. Sorry, I just need to plug in my computer. So hopefully that can help you. Is there something else you use, Aimee, to rate your ERPs when you do them?
I try not to rate it too much because I feel like with me, it'll become compulsive. Like I know myself, like if I try to rate my anxiety, like try to tell myself the presence of anxiety isn't indicative of my progress. So I try not to do that too much.
Yeah. I love that you said that because that was actually something that I think is really important when it comes to this question, because you might have a difficult time placing your distress level because you can't figure out what the right number is. And I always tell members, we are going to have to sit with the uncertainty that you may be a 5 and not a 4, right? Because
and I feel like his question is also like a just right OCD. Like he has to find that perfect feeling of a 5 or a 1 or a 10. Like, of course, I don't want you to be a 10, but you know, you have to find that number when really it's just you trying to calm your body down. It's not going to make a difference what the number is. It's just going to happen in time.
Yep. And we do know, though, in general, that habituation model, which habituation means anxiety coming down over time, that model actually isn't the best indicator of long-term progress when it comes to OCD. I know I've talked a little bit about inhibitory learning on here, but that model, the inhibitory learning model, is more indicative of that. So basically, inhibitory learning means you're just creating a different relationship with your thoughts and your emotions, which is so much of what Aimee and I have been talking about tonight, is that we're accepting our thoughts and our emotions versus trying to understand or get rid of them. And that model is way more helpful for people long-term. So
absolutely.
So we're at 9 o'clock, everyone. Obviously we never really unfortunately get to everyone's questions, but Aimee and I, like I said in the beginning, we will be back not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday.
Yes, the 19th. So yes.
Yes. And yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to answer some more questions. Do you want to give your Instagram handle again?
Yes, so it's obsessively anxious.
Okay. Yeah. And then obviously you guys can follow Treat My OCD on Instagram. My Instagram handle is mental health _Madina _ I'm AKA Mondays with Madina. You guys might see me there on Mondays answering some questions. So yeah, you can follow all these social medias. And then as always, like I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, you can certainly visit Treat My OCD. We have a lot of great therapists in a lot of different areas ready to treat you guys. They're trained, they're amazing, and they're ready to help you. So visit treatmyocd.com if you do want to set up an appointment. And we had a lot of fun.
Yes, we did, as usual.
Yes.
You guys were great sending in such great questions. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. And if you didn't get your question answered, come back. We have lots of webinars throughout the week. So come back and yeah, I guess we're out.
Madina, thank you as always.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me.
Of course, and I will see you on the 19th, same time.
Yeah. See you guys then.
All right. Bye guys.